Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Stacey.
Hi, Charlie. How's it going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Yes, I'm well, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for doing the 10-minute motivation call with me today. What we're going to talk about is managing mental health, both in our personal life and in the workplace as well, and how to deal with feelings of isolation and difficulties that come up, especially when you work freelance or when you work remotely or from home as well. But before we get started, it'd be great if you could just go into a bit about how you came to be a content marketing ninja at Exposure Ninja, and also the work you do with Papyrus for those of you who don't, for those who don't know your situation so well.
Yeah, so hello everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Stacey. I've been at Exposure Ninja for we'll be coming up five, is it 5 years? We're coming up
It's
6 years this
5 years
year.
at the moment, coming
Five,
up.
yeah, so it'll be six in February. So a long time. It's one of those things I actually kind of fell into. I was working at the time in a well-known beer brewery in Northampton. And in March 2013, one of my friends died very suddenly, which had a huge impact on me. And I had some mental health issues following her death. And sadly, almost a year to the day later, my friend Rory took his own life in March 2014, which, he wasn't somebody that I was super friendly with. He wasn't a best friend of mine, but he was the best friend of my then current best friend. So he lived in her house. I saw him a lot. So for him to suddenly take his life, from my point of view, was very difficult. Obviously, it wasn't sudden for him. He'd been struggling with his own mental health for a very long time. But following Rory's suicide, my own mental health took another downward turn. I ended up in counselling, signed off work, and in the autumn of 2014, I discovered Papyrus, and decided that I needed to go and volunteer with them. As soon as I saw they were a suicide prevention charity, I decided that I needed to go and do something. I didn't know what I needed to do, but I needed to go and do something. And it was actually so following the autumn in the February, I ended up leaving my job. After being signed up from work, I decided I don't love this job. It's not something that I'm passionate about. What am I doing? I have two friends that are no longer here. They're in their mid 20s at the time. And I just thought, what are you doing? You need to live your life. You need to do something you enjoy. And so I left my job with nothing to go to. And I found Exposure Ninja in February. It was actually my wife Becky who saw something on Facebook, I think it was, looking for content writers. And she just sent me a WhatsApp saying, "Oh, hey babe, I've seen this. Like, you should totally apply for it." And I was a bit like, "Oh, well, I've never done it properly as a job. Like, I don't know." And I think I sent an email, and within half an hour, I think it was yourself who replied to this email and said, "We really like the stuff that you sent us. Could you just do this task?" So I went away and did this task, and I think within the hour, it was like, "You've got a job," kind of thing. And it started off very small. I think it was a couple of hours a week, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it grew from there, and here I am nearly 6 years later. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, I remember our hiring process was a lot quicker back then, turning it around in an afternoon. New
Oh,
hire.
big time. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd cut the mustard. Like, I don't, definitely
Oh,
back
you
then.
definitely would.
Like, it's so rigorous. It's
Definitely
so
would.
rigorous now. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I've got a couple of questions, I guess, from everything you've just said. It sounds like those couple of years for you were really difficult and turbulent, and you went to a lot of different sources to support you with your mental health during that time. And also, I guess volunteering with Papyrus was something you did both in a kind of proactive for your own personal reasons, but wanting to contribute back to other people as well. Um, so I guess, are there any particular resources you had there that really helped you manage you would recommend to other people? And the second part of my question there is, how can people who aren't struggling with mental health but perhaps know people who are, or may not even know that people are struggling with mental health, they're just aware that people around them could be, how can they respond in a helpful way that doesn't feel insensitive?
Yeah, so going back to the first part of the question, when I began to struggle, I mean, I had issues with my mental health when I was a teenager. And that was a lot to do with me coming out and not dealing with that very well, despite having a very loving and supportive family, which at the time when you're a teenager you probably don't see. You at the time it was kind of the birth of the internet, and you're in chat rooms and you hear all these horrible stories about kids that have been disowned by their families. You're like, oh gosh, that's going to happen to me. So I had been through that process when I was young, and at the time had some very close friends and a parent of a very close friend actually that spotted this and said, we're going to go see somebody, and basically dragged me along to a local place in Northampton called the Lowdown, which is still going today actually, which I love. I've been to a few events recently for Pyrus and they were there, and it was kind of like, wow, you helped me when I was like 14, 15 years old, and they're still going. And they have a dedicated LGBTQ plus arm of their kind of outreach for teenagers, which again is still running strong today. So they helped me when I was younger. So then when I was struggling after Faye's death and after Rory took his life, it was kind of a moment for me to say, I'm recognizing these signals of me not being right. I don't feel right. I don't. And I think some people may perhaps have a misconception about depression where people just feel sad all the time, but it's not that. Oftentimes people struggle to feel anything. They don't find joy in things they used to find joy in. They have no motivation to do anything. It's just about almost, and it's not like a sudden when you wake up one day and go, oh, often it's a very slow spiral, and it might take you a while to even pick up that things aren't right. And that was the situation for me after Faye's death. And then a year later, when Rory took his life, it was like, okay, I need some help here. And at the time where I was working, we had private healthcare, which I paid into each month. So luckily I was able to access counselling very quickly. So I did talking therapy. And all through that time, I didn't take medication because I didn't feel it was right for me at the time. And I was able to manage my feelings and my depression and my anxiety at that time through talking therapy. Personally, for me, that was very helpful. And the fact that I was able to have my family and be able to speak to them very openly and honestly about how I was feeling, how I was struggling. And so that leads fairly nicely onto, from my family's perspective, of being know what to say. I mean, they didn't know what to say most of the time, but actually the biggest difference it made for me was just to know that they were there. They didn't even necessarily have to say anything. They don't have to do anything. There's no big grand gesture. And I think part of the biggest hurdle to overcome for somebody that is supporting perhaps a friend or family member or a loved one that has got a mental health, I don't want to say problem, but trying to overcome mental health struggles, is the feeling of helplessness that you may have. Because you probably, most humans, we want to, especially people we love, we want to swoop in and fix it. I want to fix you. What can I do? How can I want to solve it. I want to fix this. But actually, the best thing you can do is just realize that they have to work through it themselves, and to actually just say, I'm here. If you don't know what to say, it's perfectly acceptable to say, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to help you, but tell me. I'll ask the person what they need. What do you need from me? Rather than saying, I'm going to do this, or suggesting things. It's better actually to just say, what can I do? And if the person comes back and says nothing, or you're doing it, or just sit there, or I need 10 minutes, or just listen and be open to the possibility that what you think is right might actually be wrong.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Definitely. So better to have the approach of, I'm here for you for whatever you need, rather than you should do this, or you should try this, or why don't
absolutely
go and take a new exercise class together.
Yeah, for sure. And because obviously only that person knows what's going to be right for them, and sometimes what you think is right for somebody will be completely wrong. And that's when you look at the literature, which we'll share afterwards with people to be able to have a read of stuff. Actually, probably the one thing people say the most is their sort of good willing suggestions from outsiders of, well, you should do this. Have you tried that? That actually contributes and makes things worse, because you just think, well, somebody says, oh, go and have a run, and actually it's taken all of your might to get out of bed that day. The last thing that you're going to want to do is go for a run, and almost make people feel more guilty. So just be there and sort of give yourself up to the fact that you just need to know that you can't fix it all the time.
That's really useful, I think. So the second question I kind of had was around managing mental health when you work from home as well. It's been like a really big discussion point, particularly because there was a Buffer survey last year that was showing that working from home, though it has lots of benefits, of course, also made it really difficult for staff to unplug after work and because you can just jump back on the laptop anytime, or Slack goes off on your phone, and can cause feelings of isolation, of course, especially if you're not working from a co-working space or collaborative area. But because I think it's something like 85% of people actually are working from their home office, their bedroom, their kitchen, wherever. Do you have any advice for how you've managed that, and for the Ninja team on how they can manage that?
Yeah, absolutely. So only very recently have I deleted Slack off my phone, and it is joyful. Okay,
Yeah,
people,
100%.
take it off your phone. Right, I've still got my emails on there. Okay, so I'll hold my hands up. Probably in an ideal world, I need to delete that as well, because occasionally you'll sit there and even me, I have private clients as well, and an email will come through at 9 o'clock at night, and I'll think, oh, I could probably do that now. But and
Yeah,
it takes a lot for me to then go. But then once I've seen it, I've seen it. So it's kind
yeah,
of so
can't
big,
let it
big
go.
what? Yeah, big one for me. Almost 6 years in, and only was when my phone broke back in summer last year, and they gave me just a rubbish phone. I couldn't have anything on it because it just wouldn't work. I literally could send text messages, not even WhatsApp.
Back to like
And
Nokia 3310.
yeah, and I had 2 weeks of not having emails or Slack or anything on my phone, and it was joyful.
Hmm.
So delete apps off your phone 100%. Also, set your working hours and stick to them. So everybody at Ninja will know I'm not an early bird. My working hours are 10 till 6. But now that I've sort of allowed myself to have those working hours, and I don't punish myself that I'm not working at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, that's a massive load off. So kind of realize when you are motivated to work, set your working hours and stick to them where possible. Obviously, there's going to be times where you might need to pop out and come back in, so you maybe work a bit earlier or you work a bit later to make up. But stick to the hours that are comfortable for you, and set them and try and be strict about it. Something else that I use personally for my own mental health, because I do have issues switching off at night. I mean, I'm an owl person anyway. I tend to be quite more active in the evening. Even if I've had an early start, I still find that I can't get to sleep before 11 o'clock at night. So I use a sleep app. So I use Calm. Other versions are available, but I use Calm personally. It's paid for. I think it's about £10 a year. It's the best £10 I've ever spent. And it is effectively somebody reading you a bedtime story, and it's glorious.
Sounds lovely.
And it really is lovely. And I speak to people about it, they go, "Really? You have people read you a bedtime story?" I'm like, imagine, when you were a kid, how great it was when your parents read you a
Yeah,
bedtime story, and how quickly you fell asleep. Like, I marvel at my niece and nephew, how quickly they can fall asleep when you read them at night time. And actually, it still works as an adult. So I would 100%. They do a free version. You can try it. If you don't like it, bin it. But it was great in my opinion.
brilliant.
And the only other thing I would say is join in. So we're all very isolated, but we do have a brilliant community at Ninja. The water cooler's there, but not just that. That can be quite frantic at times. There's other smaller little. I mean, I don't even know how many channels there are, but there's loads. There's like TV, cooking. There's like Ninja Fur Babies, which is just my joy. There's just like ninjas that post pictures of their pets all the time, which if you're having a down day, just go in there and just scroll because it's amazing. Um, and there's that support on there as well. So ninjas that have got kids, like they all talk to each other. Oh, I'm having this issue. Like, can you help? And just having people, you might be physically on your own, but you're not on your own.
Yeah.
But obviously, you have to have that motivation to join in. If you don't join in, you don't reap the benefits of those conversations. And sometimes it might just be 10 minutes of having a gift chat in the water cooler that's just silly, completely you don't feel like you're getting anything from it. It's just silly, but it's just that little bit of camaraderie and that kind of workplace banter, a word that I don't like, but that you would get in a workplace if you just got up to make a cup of tea, that you don't necessarily get when you're kind of working from home. So I would 100% say take advantage of that when you can.
Yeah, definitely agree. Some of those channels are really great, even if it's even if it's not related to anything you actually need. You can start a conversation so easily about absolutely anything, and there's always people who are like, yeah, I'm going to jump in this conversation and talk about what to make with mashed potatoes or whatever, like
Yeah,
literally
absolutely.
all
Yeah.
kinds. So as we mentioned earlier, you've been working with Ian for 5 years. Actually, you were one of the first content marketing ninjas I hired, along with James Speyer, who is the ancient one as well. But throughout all your time here, you've actually worked on other freelance projects outside of Ian and some of your own clients as well during that time in a kind of ongoing way. What's your experience been like managing all these changing workloads and projects and priorities? And I guess also sometimes sourcing your work as well, because I feel
Yeah.
like that can be quite it's like an additional level of work mayhem that you have to deal with in your life as well.
Yeah, I kind of sometimes go, what have you done? Like it would be so easy for me to just pick one, woman, pick one. But no, it's interesting. Obviously, it's up and down. There are days when I just go, oh my gosh, why have I done this? Just either go full time somewhere, it would be so much easier. But actually, what I then realize is that when I was working full time in one place, like I just get bored. Like I need stuff that keeps my interest. So obviously, even people that are full time at Ninja, you know, you get to work on different clients, so every day is different and there's always something new, and that's kind of what I've got times 100 with kind of my own clients, plus I work in-house a couple of days a week, for another client as well. So yeah, like anything else, it's a constant learning curve, so I'm still learning how to manage that, and as I am actually trying to this year focus a bit more on my own business and try and get some more of those clients, it's just trying to manage all those different things. And one of the things that I always come back to is just communicate. So especially with Ninja, obviously I make a commitment each month to the hours I'm going to give, and it's about just making sure that I have not overcommitted myself. I'd rather undercommit and be able to say, actually, I've got capacity to do some more. But again, it's just communication. So Ian, yourself, Luke, Tim, all the way through, Sam, my current team leader, just fantastic. And I've had moments where I've slipped up. That summer just gone, myself and Becky had a bit of a torrid time. She's going through an awful thing with work, and my communication slipped, and stuff just seemed to snowball because I wasn't talking, because I retreated, which is my natural reaction when stuff gets hard. And that's another thing with mental health, is a lot of people's natural reaction is to retreat, and it's very difficult to kind of push yourself back against that and actually say, no, I need to communicate out. I need to tell people what's going on, because actually if you just tell people, look, something's happened, it's really rubbish, like I just need a bit of support here. And Ian's fantastic for that, and they will accommodate you as best they can. And I would just say, don't suffer in silence. Don't just think, oh gosh, I've committed to do X, Y, and Z and I can't do it. The sooner that you communicate that there's something's happened, you're not going to get in trouble. You're not going to get shouted at. The world isn't going to end. It's just something, a conversation that needs to be had to just say, this has happened. Can you help me? Which in itself is hard to do. 100%. I've done it. But again, that's that learning curve. A bit of advice would just to say, just try and be honest about it. And if you do envision something changing, so I mean, I've got some stuff at the minute that's a bit up in the air in terms of work. Just have that conversation and just say, I think I'm possibly going to get this contract. I'm possibly not, but just so you know, my hours might go up slightly or go down slightly next month. just to prepare people so that they can make contingency plans as well. It's when you kind of leave stuff to the last minute and all of a sudden go, oh, I can't do that on like, I don't know, the 29th of the month or something. That's when there's going to be issues. So it just comes down to communication again, in my experience.
I know that feeling though. It's always so tempting just to retreat into a ball and be like, this will be fine. I'll just handle it myself. And then actually, the further in you go, the more you realize you're likely to self-destruct if you don't bring other people in, especially when they're all like, what's going on? Where are you at? Can I do anything? And I
think that's quite obvious as well with some people that are maybe more active like myself. I do tend to chat quite a lot in the channels, and I am quite communicative, so I think when that changes, it's a bit of a red flag with people. They go, oh, hang on, she's not said anything. Like I've messaged her a few times and it hasn't come back to me, like there's something amiss here. So and I think that's something else to know, that as much as you may feel you're working on your own and people don't know you, they do know you, and you have got colleagues out there and friends that do care about you. So just remember that you aren't on your own.
Perfect. So my last question is that alongside all of this, of course, you've been working with Papyrus, and that's been a pretty constant thing during your life for the past, well, I guess, how many years is that? 6 or so years now. Can you share a little bit about the main type of work you do with Papyrus, how you fit that into your schedule as well, and just how other ninjas could get involved in something like Papyrus if they wanted to?
Yeah, so as I said right at the start of the call, I mean, I kind of simultaneously found Papyrus and Exposure Ninja at the same time. I think Papyrus ever so slightly sooner. And they kind of, so in terms of the work I do for them, I volunteer with them. And when I first found them, it was a small project. They'd had some funding to put on for just a year, and they basically had funding to find some volunteers in the West Midlands and assist train them, which is applied suicide intervention skills training. which is effectively like mental health first aid, but it allows you to do a suicide intervention. So, for example, if you came across somebody that was in distress, you'd be able to speak to them and hopefully make them safe until you could ensure their safety further down the line. So I'm assist trained, and that was all through Papyrus. So the first year was effectively a project to train up volunteers, make them aware of Papyrus, train them up to be assist trained, and then almost set them loose within their own communities to spread the message of Papyrus. It all sounds very, but yeah, for sure. And so it was basically about just saying, suicide is everywhere. Unfortunately, it's everybody's business. It affects every single community. One of the things that we do quite often when we are volunteers, if we're doing refresher training or something, you do this task, and it's like, okay, you get a big piece of poster paper, and you kind of say, who is at risk of suicide. And the point of that task is that everybody comes back and says, oh, nurses, doctors, students, high stakes managers, people that live in London or da, da, da. And basically the moral of the story is everybody. Nobody is not at risk. And so it's everybody's business, and it happens in everybody's community, whatever your community may be. And so that's kind of the crux of the issue, and the work that I do with Papyrus is to just kind of make people more aware and make people more comfortable talking about suicide, because it's a very taboo issue even now. If you think about the language that people use around it, often people still say committed suicide, which actually is a very loaded phrase. You kind of commit a crime, and actually suicide has not been a crime since the 60s, I think, possibly before, which in itself is still very recent for it to be decriminalized, but it's still all of those things. We need to make people more comfortable to talk about their feelings and actually not get to that point where they've just internalized everything and thinking that that's the only option. So I go and do events. So we did an event back in the summer in Northampton with another company called the Grey Dog. They put a festival on, and they just have local music artists and things, and we had a stand and people just come and talk, and it's one of those things. It's just fairly intense. Like, we go to prides and things and have stalls, and we walk in the parades, and the amount of people that will come and disclose things to you, or they'll just come and thank you, or they'll just, when you're walking in the parade, they'll just clap furiously because they've lost somebody, or they themselves have struggled with thoughts of suicide. So it's a very heartwarming thing to be able to do, and I enjoy it very much. But again, it is very intense. So one of the main things that Papyrus have is a call line called Hope Line, which I'm wearing. I don't know if this is going to work. I always wear a band for them. So this is Hope Line, and we'll put all this information. And that is so anybody that is having thoughts of suicide, if you're concerned about somebody having thoughts of suicide, or for myself as a volunteer, I can ring Hope Line. So if I've done an intervention, or if I've been on a stand or something and I need to debrief, I can ring them up and say, I'm a volunteer. I just need to chat to somebody to talk through what I've heard today, because again, supporting people or just hearing people's stories is very intense sometimes. So they're fantastic, and they're available to anybody.
Are they 24/7 as well?
They're not 24/7 yet. So that, again, I'll post the hours somewhere so people can see them. I think it's like 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. or something most days, apart from bank holidays. But yeah, so they're available for people, specifically for young people, which is up to the age of 35. But if you are older, or you have concerns about somebody that's older, they're not going to, they're not going to put the phone down. They're there to talk for anybody. But they're also great at signposting. So if you do call them and they have, they'll be able to signpost you to different services, or specifically within your own area and things like that. So but if people want to get involved, just being able to have conversations with your friends and family about it, and be able to use the word suicide. People really struggle, so that's something else. But if you go onto their website, they have a whole page of how you can get involved. It might be that you want to donate, you want to fundraise, you might actually want to volunteer and do something. So all the information's on there.
Okay, amazing. Stacey, this chat was so wonderful, and really, I feel like it's really helped on both sides, for both if you are someone who is managing mental health struggles, or if you're someone who knows someone. It's been really, really useful. So I guess with this video, we'll share all of the resources you mentioned, both for Papyrus and any other further reading that you think could be useful for people too. Yeah, that was wonderful. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.